I didn't find out the normal way, not by catching him in the act, not by some dramatic confrontation. I found out because I woke up at 3:17 a.m. and felt someone breathing behind me, not close enough to touch, but close enough that I knew, instantly, I wasn't alone. The thing is, I wasn't supposed to be. I'm John, 30, single, freshly between apartments, and temporarily crashing at my friend Michael's place for a couple of weeks. That was the phrase we kept using. A couple of weeks. Long enough for my lease situation to sort itself out. Short enough that I wouldn't be a burden. Michael had offered without hesitation. "Dude, you know you can stay here," he said. Guest room's basically unused anyway. We'd been friends since college. Same major, same dumb sense of humor, same habit of staying up too late talking about nothing important. He was one of those people who felt safe. Familiar. Predictable. That's why I didn't think twice when I tossed my duffel bag into a spare room and settled in. The apartment itself was quiet. Too quiet, honestly. Clean in a way that suggested Michael didn't have people over much anymore. Neutral colors. Minimal decor. The kind of place that looks like someone lives there alone and plans to keep it that way. The first few days were fine. Normal. We fell into an easy routine. Mornings were rushed. Him heading to work, me working remotely from the kitchen table. Evenings were relaxed. We'd order takeout, half-watch something on Netflix, scroll on our phones, complain about work. Nothing weird, at least, nothing I noticed. Looking back, there were little things, stuff I brushed off at the time, like how Michael always seemed awake when I went to bed, no matter how late it was, or how he'd ask casual questions that felt oddly specific. "You sleep okay last night? You always toss and turn like that? Do you usually sleep on your side?" I joked about it. Told him he sounded like my mother. He laughed it off. And yeah, if I'm being honest, I noticed him noticing me, lingering glances. His eyes flicking up when I stretched in the kitchen. The way he'd go quiet sometimes, like he was thinking too hard about something he didn't want to say out loud. But people notice each other. Especially when you're suddenly sharing space. So I didn't read into it. Until the night I woke up. It had been a long day. One of those mentally exhausting ones, where your body feels heavy the second you lie down. I remember checking my phone, 12:48 a.m., then rolling onto my side and passing out almost immediately. The next thing I remember was that sense of wrongness. No sound. No movement. Just the feeling that something had changed. My eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the darkness. The room was exactly how I'd left it. Door closed, curtains drawn. A thin line of streetlight cutting across the floor. Then I heard it. Breathing. Soft. Controlled. Not mine. It was coming from behind me. Every muscle in my body locked up. I didn't move, didn't turn around. I barely even breathed. My heart was pounding so hard I was convinced whoever was there could hear it. At first, my brain scrambled for rational explanations. Maybe Michael had knocked and I didn't wake up. Maybe he needed something. Maybe he thought this was his room. But none of that explained why he wasn't saying anything, why he was just standing there. I could feel it. The presence, the weight of someone watching me sleep. Seconds stretched out painfully long. Then, just as quietly as it started, the breathing stopped. I heard a soft shift. Footsteps retreating. The door opening. Closing again with impossible care. Only then did I finally move. I sat up so fast my head spun, staring at the door like it might open again. It didn't. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. By morning, I had almost convinced myself it had been a dream. Almost. But deep down, I knew one thing for sure. Someone had been in my room. And it wasn't a stranger. It was Michael. The next morning was worse than the night. Not because anything happened, but because nothing did. Michael was already in the kitchen when I dragged coffee brewing. Shirt on. Calm. Normal. Too normal. "Morning," he said, glancing over his shoulder like it was any other day. I froze for half a second, searching his face for something. Guilt. Awkwardness. Anything that would confirm I hadn't imagined the whole thing. There was nothing. "You look like shit," he added casually. "Sleep okay?" There it was again. That question. I watched him pour coffee like he hadn't been standing in my room hours earlier, watching me breathe in my sleep. "Yeah," I lied, my voice a little rough. "Just woke up a few times." He nodded, taking a sip. "You always do that. Light sleeper." My stomach dropped. "Always?" I forced a laugh. "Guess so." We stood there in silence for a moment, the hum of the fridge filling the space. I kept expecting him to say something, to acknowledge it, to slip up. He didn't. He grabbed his keys, told me he'd be late that night, and left like nothing had happened. The door clicked shut. I stood there alone, heart racing. Okay, fine. Maybe I had dreamed it. Stress, unfamiliar place, my brain filling in gaps. That happens, right? Except, the more I thought about it, the more details came back. Too sharp. Too specific. The way the breathing had been controlled. Intentional. The way the door had closed slowly, quietly. Like whoever left didn't want to wake me. That wasn't a dream. And over the next few days, the feeling followed me. I started noticing things I hadn't before. Michael never knocked on my door anymore. Not even during the day. He'd just pause outside it. I'd hear it sometimes. A shift of weight. A breath. Then he'd walk away. At night, I became hyper-aware of every sound. Floorboards creaking. The soft click of his bedroom door opening, footsteps moving through the hall. But he never came in again. At least, not that I noticed. Instead, it became this quiet, invisible tension. Like we were both aware of something neither of us was willing to say. He watched me more. Not openly, but in reflections. In the TV screen. In the microwave door. Sometimes I'd catch him staring and he wouldn't look away right away. Just hold my gaze for a beat too long. It wasn't aggressive. It was curious, possessive, almost. One night, about a week in, I woke up again. This time, I didn't feel him breathing. I smelled him. That faint, familiar scent, soap, and something warmer, human, like skin. My eyes snapped open. The room was dark. Empty, but the door was open. I was sure I'd closed it. I lay there, heart pounding, staring at the doorway. The hallway beyond was pitch black. "Michael?" I whispered. Nothing. I didn't sleep after that. The next evening, I finally snapped. We were on the couch, half watching a movie neither of us was paying attention to. I felt him beside me, close enough that our knees almost touched. Almost. "Hey," I said suddenly. He turned to me. "Yeah?" I swallowed. "Do you ever walk around at night?" His eyebrows lifted slightly. "What?" "Like, sleepwalking. Or not sleeping. Whatever." There was a pause, just long enough to feel wrong. "I don't sleep great," he said carefully. "Why?" I shrugged, trying to sound casual. "Thought I heard someone the other night." He studied my face, really studied it, and for the first time since I'd moved in, he smiled. But it wasn't his usual easy grin. It was softer, slower. "Probably just me getting water," he said. "Sorry if I woke you." Something about the way he said sorry made my skin prickle. Later that night, I lay awake on purpose. Lights off, eyes closed, breathing slow and even. Waiting. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Just when I started to think nothing would happen, I heard it. The door. Slow. Quiet. Controlled. I didn't move. Footsteps entered the room. They stopped beside my bed. I felt it again. That presence. That attention. Heavy and focused, like I was being examined. I could feel his eyes on me. My heart was screaming at me to move. To sit up. To confront him. But another part of me, one I didn't fully understand yet, stayed still, because this time, I wanted to know how far he'd go. I don't know how long he stood there. Time did that weird thing where seconds stretch and blur together. My body stayed perfectly still, every muscle locked in place, my breathing slow and fake steady. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. He was close, close enough that the air around me felt warmer. I felt the mattress dip, just slightly. He sat down. Not fully, just enough to test it. Like he wasn't sure if he should be there yet. My mind was screaming, "This is it, move, say something, now." But I didn't, because there was something different this time. He wasn't hovering. He wasn't just watching. He was hesitant. I felt his hand hover above the bed, not touching me, just there, like he was fighting with himself. Then he whispered my name, so quiet, I almost missed it. John. My chest tightened. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't sleepwalking. That was intention. His fingers brushed the blanket near my shoulder. Not my skin. Not yet. Just the fabric. Testing. Like he was making sure I was real. I could feel his breath now. Slow. Shaky. Shit, he muttered under his breath. The words sounded frustrated. Strained, like he was holding something back. I swallowed, the sound loud in the silence. His hand froze. I felt him tense, like he was about to bolt. That's when I opened my eyes. The room was dark, but there was enough light from the street outside to see his outline. Michael was sitting on the edge of my bed, shoulders hunched, staring at me like he'd been caught doing something illegal. Our eyes locked. Neither of us spoke. His face drained of color. He started, then stopped. His mouth opened again, no sound coming out. My heart was pounding, but my voice came out steadier than I expected. How long? I asked. He flinched. How long have you been doing this? Silence. Then quietly, I didn't mean to. I pushed myself up onto my elbow. That doesn't answer the question. He ran a hand through his hair, breathing hard now. A few nights. My stomach twisted. Watching me? He nodded once. Barely. I swear I never touched you, he said quickly. Not like that. Why? I asked. That finally broke him. He looked away, jaw tight, hands clenched in his lap like he was bracing for impact. Because I couldn't stop thinking about you, he said. The words hung between us. I thought it would go away. He continued, voice low, that it was just proximity. You being here, sleeping down the hall. But it didn't. I sat up fully now, the blanket pooling at my waist. So instead, I said slowly, you came into my room at night. He winced. I know how that sounds. How it is. I corrected. He nodded again. Yeah. We stared at each other, the tension thick and electric. Fear. Anger. Something else curling underneath it all. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. His eyes finally met mine again. Dark, honest. Because if I said it out loud, he said, I wouldn't be able to pretend it wasn't real. My pulse kicked harder. There it was. The truth. Raw and unfiltered. I should have been furious. Should have told him to get out. Should have grabbed my phone, my keys, anything. Instead, I asked, what were you going to do tonight? He hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. Nothing, he said. I just needed to see you. Make sure you were here. That's not nothing, I said quietly. No, he admitted. It's not. We sat there in silence, the air between us charged with everything we hadn't said over the years. All the glances, the tension, the things we'd both ignored. You should be pissed, he said finally. I get it if you want to leave. I looked at him, really looked at him, the nervous way his knee was bouncing. The way his hands shook, just a little. This wasn't a guy getting off on control. This was a guy who'd lost control completely. I'm not asleep, I said. I know, and you're not allowed in here without my permission. I know, I took a breath. So if you're here right now, his breath hitched, it's because I'm letting you be. His eyes widened slightly. You're not scared? He asked. I was. I said honestly, now I'm just done pretending. Another long pause. John, he said softly, tell me to leave if you want me to leave. I searched my own chest for the answer. Then I said, Don't. The word hung between us. Don't. Michael didn't move right away. Like he didn't trust it. Like he thought if he shifted even an inch, I'd change my mind. "You're sure?" he asked quietly. I nodded once. I wouldn't have said it if I wasn't. That seemed to do something to him. His shoulders dropped just a little, like he'd been carrying something heavy for too long and finally set it down. But he still didn't touch me. Instead, he said, "I need you to understand something." I waited. "I never wanted to scare you," he said. The second I realized how messed up this was, I hated myself for it. Every night I told myself it was the last one. And yet, I kept coming back. He finished. Because during the day I could pretend we were just normal. And at night I couldn't lie to myself anymore. The honesty in his voice made my chest ache. "You know the worst part?" he added. "I didn't even fantasize about doing anything to you. I just wanted to be close. To see you breathe. To know you were really there." That sent a shiver down my spine. Not fear this time, but something deeper and more unsettling. "You could have just talked to me," I said. "I know." He let out a shaky laugh. "But what if you didn't feel the same? What if I ruined everything?" I looked at him for a long moment. "Michael," I said slowly, "do you really think I didn't notice?" He frowned. "Notice what?" "The way you look at me," I said. "The questions, the tension, the fact that you somehow always know when I'm awake or asleep." His lips parted slightly. I thought I was being subtle. I snorted. "You're terrible at subtle." For the first time that night, he smiled. A real one. Nervous but genuine. I shifted on the bed, making space beside me. "Sit properly," I said. "You're halfway out the door already." He hesitated, then slowly moved further onto the bed, keeping a careful distance. Our shoulders almost touched. Almost. The silence between us felt different now. Not heavy. Expectant. "So," he said quietly, "what happens now?" I stared at the wall for a second, listening to my own heartbeat. "Now," I said, "we stop lying. To ourselves, at least." He nodded. "And," I added, "no more sneaking into my room like a ghost." A hint of embarrassment crossed his face. "Deal." "If you want to be here," I continued, "you knock. Or you ask. Or we talk about it like adults." "Deal," he said again, more firmly this time. We sat there, side by side, both very aware of how close we were. His arm brushed mine. Neither of us pulled away. "I should tell you something too," I said. He turned to look at me. "I wasn't just scared the other night," I admitted. "Part of me was curious." His breath caught. I kept telling myself it was just my imagination, or that I was projecting. But when I realized it was you, I met his eyes. I didn't hate it. That was all it took. Not a kiss, not a touch, just truth. Michael leaned back slightly, giving me space like he was deliberately choosing not to rush this. "John," he said softly, "if this goes anywhere, I want it to be because you actually want it, not because you felt cornered." I appreciated that more than I wanted to admit. "I want to explore whatever this is," I said, slowly. "With boundaries." A small smile tugged at his mouth. "I can do slow." We stayed there talking until the sky outside started to lighten, about when it started. How long he'd been questioning himself. How I'd avoided my own feelings by labeling everything as temporary. By the time morning came, something fundamental had shifted. He stood up first, stretching stiffly. "I'll make coffee," he said. "You probably didn't sleep much." I smiled faintly. "Not exactly." At the door, he paused and looked back at me. "For what it's worth," he said, "I'm glad you woke up. So was I. Because once the secrets were out, there was no going back to pretending. The days after that night felt unreal. Nothing happened, and yet everything had changed. Michael didn't come into my room anymore. Not once. If anything, he became almost overly respectful. Knocking. Asking before sitting too close. Giving me space in a way that felt intentional, not distant. Which somehow made the tension worse. Because now it was out in the open, we'd catch each other looking and not immediately look away. Conversations lingered. Silences stretched. Not awkward, just charged. Like we were both aware there was a line between us now, and neither of us was sure who would cross it first. One evening, a few days later, the power went out. Not dramatic. Just a sudden click, the apartment dropping into darkness, followed by Michael swearing softly from the kitchen. "Breaker again," he said. "This place is ancient." I grabbed my phone for light and followed him down the hall. The apartment felt different without the background noise. Smaller. More intimate. He flicked the breaker back on. The lights didn't come back. "Great," he muttered. Storm must have taken the whole block. We stood there in the dark, lit only by my phone screen. He looked different like that. Softer. Less guarded. "Guess it's candles and takeout," I said. He smiled. "You really embracing the moody vibe, huh?" We ended up on the couch, a couple of candles flickering on the coffee table, eating cold leftovers straight from the containers. It felt stupidly domestic. At some point, without really thinking about it, I leaned back. My shoulder touched his chest. He froze. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah," I said. "If you are." He exhaled slowly. "I am." He didn't wrap his arm around me. Didn't pull me closer. He just stayed still, letting the contact exist. And that restraint, that choice, did something to me. "You don't have to hold back so hard," I said softly. "I know," he replied. "I just don't want to screw this up." I turned my head slightly, enough to look at him. "You already did the hardest part." "What's that?" "Being honest." Our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he asked, barely above a whisper, "Can I kiss you?" That question, simple, respectful, hit me harder than any impulsive move could have. "Yes," I said. He leaned in slowly enough that I could stop him if I wanted to. I didn't. The kiss was gentle, almost tentative, like we were both relearning something we'd ignored for years. His lips were warm, careful. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. "Okay," he breathed. "Yeah," I laughed softly. "You good?" "I'm more than good," he said. "I'm trying not to overthink." "Too late for that." He smiled, then kissed me again. This time deeper, not desperate, just sure. When we finally pulled apart, we stayed close, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. "So," I said, "what does this make us?" He thought about it. "Two idiots who waited too long." I snorted. "Fair. But," he added, "also two people who are actually doing this right." I nodded. Later that night, when I went to my room, I didn't lock the door. Not because I was afraid anymore, but because I trusted him. And for the first time since I had agreed to stay just a couple of weeks, I wasn't sure I wanted to leave at all. Once we crossed that line, there was no snapping back to just friends, but we didn't jump straight into anything dramatic either. If anything, we slowed down even more. Michael started knocking on my door every morning, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. "Coffee," he'd say. "And I swear it's actually good today." We'd sit at the kitchen table, knees brushing, talking about nothing and everything. The tension didn't disappear. It evolved, less sharp, more steady, like a low current always humming between us. One night, about a week after that first kiss, we ended up talking until past midnight again. No TV. No phones. Just the two of us on opposite ends of the couch, lights low. "You ever think about how close we were to never doing this?" he asked suddenly. "All the time." I admitted. If I hadn't woken up that night, he nodded slowly. I would have stopped. Eventually. Or convinced myself I imagined it. And we'd still be pretending. I said. "Yeah." There was something almost sad in his voice. I shifted closer. "Come here." He did. Immediately. No hesitation. This time when we kissed, there was no uncertainty. His hands found my waist, steady and warm. Mine slid up his chest, feeling his heart racing under my palm. "Bedroom?" he asked quietly. I swallowed. "Yeah." We moved slowly, like every step mattered. Like we were memorizing the moment, instead of rushing through it. Inside his room, the air felt heavier, more private. He stopped me just inside the door. "Hey," he said. "One more thing." I looked up at him. "If at any point you want to stop, anything at all, you say it. No explanations." I smiled softly. "Same goes for you." That was when he kissed me again. Deeper, more confident. His hand slid under my shirt, fingertips warm against my skin, and I felt myself melt into him. Nothing about it felt rushed, or forced, or wrong. It felt like something that had been waiting a long time to happen. Later, much later, we lay tangled together, the room quiet except for our breathing. I stared at the ceiling, trying to process how natural it all felt. Michael traced lazy circles on my arm. "You okay?" he asked. "More than okay," I said. "Just didn't expect it to feel this right." He smiled against my shoulder. "Yeah, same." I turned my head to look at him. "You know this means I'm not just a guest anymore, right?" He raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "If I stay," I said carefully, "it's not temporary." He didn't even hesitate. "Good," he said, "because I stopped thinking of you as temporary a long time ago." That settled something in my chest. I stayed the night in his room, not because we needed to, but because we wanted to wake up together. And when morning came, sunlight spilling across the bed, Michael stirred beside me and smiled, like this was exactly where he'd hoped we'd end up. Turns out those couple of weeks were never really about finding a new place. They were about finally finding home. The funny thing is, once everything was out in the open, the night stopped being the scary part. It was the days that challenged. That's when the cracks show. Michael was meticulous. I mean meticulous. Dishes washed immediately. Shoes lined up perfectly. Groceries organized by category. I, on the other hand, had a habit of leaving my hoodie on the back of chairs and forgetting mugs in my room. The first time he pointed it out, I expected tension. Instead, he smiled and said, "So this is what dating you is going to be like." That word, dating, hung there for a second. "Guess so," I replied. "You still in?" He didn't even look up from the sink. "Yeah, I'm in." Still, we had to renegotiate everything. Privacy, space. What it meant that I technically still had a guest room. One night, about 2 weeks after everything changed, Michael sat on the edge of the bed and said, "Can I ask you something without making it weird?" I laughed. "At this point, I think we're past weird. Do you feel like you're staying because you want to?" he said. "Or because it's easier than figuring out your next move?" That caught me off guard. I thought about it longer than I expected. "I think," I said slowly, "I started staying because it was convenient. But now I stay because I want to wake up here." He nodded, relieved but thoughtful. "Good. I just didn't want you feeling trapped." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. Because weeks ago, I'd felt watched. Now, I felt chosen. We told no one at first. Not because we were ashamed, but because this felt fragile, like something that needed a little quiet to grow properly. But secrets have weight. One night, lying side by side, I asked, "When did it start for you?" He stared at the ceiling. "Honestly, years ago. I just didn't have a name for it." "Why me?" I asked. He turned his head, looking at me like the answer was obvious. "Because you see me," he said. "Not who I try to be. Just me." That hit harder than I expected. "I always thought you were the confident one," I admitted. He laughed softly. Only at night, apparently. Life didn't magically become perfect. We argued about dumb things. We had awkward moments. We had to unlearn habits built around pretending. But every night, when the apartment went quiet, there was no longer fear in the dark. Just warmth, just trust, just the steady presence of someone who no longer needed to hide. And sometimes, when I'd wake up in the middle of the night, I'd feel Michael shift beside me, half asleep, reaching out without opening his eyes, not to watch, just to make sure I was still there. It didn't end with a big moment. No dramatic confession, no sudden life overhaul, no perfect movie-style resolution. Good location, fair rent. Everything I'd been waiting for. I brought it up one evening while we were cooking. "I toured a place today," I said, trying to sound casual. Michael didn't stop chopping vegetables, but I noticed his shoulders tense just slightly. "Oh yeah," he said. "Any good?" "Yeah," I replied. "Actually, yeah." He nodded. "That's good." We finished cooking in silence. Later, sitting on the couch, I finally said what we were both thinking. "I don't have to take it." He turned to me then, really turned to face me. "I don't want you staying because you feel obligated," he said, "or because it's comfortable." I smiled softly. Funny. I was about to say the same thing. We talked for a long time that night, about independence, about fear, about how easy it is to confuse safety with stagnation. In the end, I took the apartment, not because I wanted to leave him, but because I didn't want either of us wondering what if. The night before I moved out, we lay in bed together, fingers loosely intertwined. "Remember when you thought I was stalking you?" he said quietly. I laughed. "To be fair, you were being creepy." "Fair," he admitted. I still cringe when I think about it. I turned toward him. "You didn't cross the line. You stopped when it mattered. That's why we're here." He kissed my forehead. "Still can't believe you didn't punch me." "Thought about it," I said. "Decided to wake up instead." The move didn't change us. If anything, it made us better. Sleepovers turned into routine. My place, his place. Toothbrushes duplicated. Clothes left behind on purpose this time, and sometimes, rarely, but meaningfully, I'd wake up in the middle of the night at my own apartment, alone, and feel that old instinctive flicker of awareness. Then my phone would buzz. "You awake?" Just checking, not watching, not lurking, just caring. We'd laugh about it later, how something that once scared me had turned into trust because it was finally brought into the light. I still think about that first night sometimes, about how close everything came to going wrong, but it didn't, because eventually someone had the courage to stop